Well, as you know, today's date is June 30th, and that means tomorrow will officially start the month of. Oh, I was hoping.
Joo-lie.
Yeah! Oh, it makes me so happy. Joining us now here on GCR, he is the great Ben McDonald. Ben, it's Glenn. It's great to chat with you as always. Thanks for taking the time for us.
Yeah, Glenn, my pleasure. Always good to chat with you as well, man. Good to be back in Birdland. I kind of really didn't take a month off. I was gone for a month. I was working the college game for a while, and so that's all wrapped up. And the Oklahoma Sooners won the national championship, so I'm ready to and glad to be back here in Baltimore and trying to get this thing turned around. I'm hoping for the Orioles.
It's good to have you back, but as you point out, Ben, they need to get things turned around. If I ask you broadly, how do you make sense of this? Because I think we all agree that this team is better talent-wise than their record would indicate. How do you explain the situation that they find themselves in now, 8 games under 500?
Yeah, look, I think it's frustrating. I think it's been frustrating for the players, for the coaches, for the front office, and certainly for this Oriole fan base. So many expectations really starting last year, and last year was obviously a rough year. And you could write last year off to a lot of injuries, 70 players to get through 162 games, which was a franchise record. And so I kind of wrote last year off just because of an injury standpoint. And then you go sign, you get Taylor Ward, you get Pete Alonso, and you get others, and there's expectations again when the season begins, and gosh, I don't really know how to explain it. I know obviously the pitching got off to a rough start early in the year. There were some injuries there, with Zach Eflin. Dean Kramer may come back tomorrow and pitch. It sounds like there's been some injuries on that side of the ball as well. And, losing Jordan Westberg early hurt a lot. Losing Jackson Holiday, for a lot of the season, that hurt too. But also there's been some guys that just have not performed, and the offense has not performed like you thought it would, even having the injuries that they've had, and it's good to see the starting pitching get going, and Kyle Bradish has kind of looked like Kyle Bradish other than his last start, and Trevor Rogers has looked really good. And look, the starters have been solid for the Orioles in the last month. I've been kind of following it from a distance. They've been really good. And last night was another perfect example of that. I mean, Shane Baz was outstanding, but I don't know how to say it or really what the answer is. It's just baseball to me. And I'm around these guys all the time. I watch them work out hours before the game. It's not for, I know the fan base doesn't want to hear this, but these guys are working, and they're working hard, and they're trying to be the best versions of themselves. It's just not panning out as of yet, and there's so many things that I could put a finger on. I think it begins with defense, and the defense to me has just been off this year for whatever reason. And I think it was a concern for everybody going in, okay, this team's probably going to hit. They're going to be an average pitching staff, maybe slightly above average. But we didn't know about the defense. And if you look what's happened this year, I think the Orioles are at the 5th most errors in baseball, and nobody has more unearned runs than what the Orioles have this year. The Pirates and the Orioles are tied for the most unearned runs in baseball going into play today at 55 each. That's a lot. And so there's a lot of things that have to get cleaned up, in my opinion, for the Orioles to make a run at this thing. And look, the great news is that in a typical year, the Orioles would be out of it by now. I mean, way out of it, with the American League. But going into play yesterday, there were 4 teams in the American League that were above 500. That's it, 4 teams. And so it's been a wild year. And because of that, the Orioles are still, in my opinion, just one good week or a good week and a half of baseball, and they're right there again. Now, I know they're going to play today 4 games out of the final wild card spot, I think is what it is. But look, there's plenty of time to get this thing turned around. I do believe, to your point, this team is very talented. I do believe that they're quite capable of putting it together and having a strong second half. And I do believe that they are and can be a playoff team with some help at the trade deadline. But look, Mike Elias made it quite clear the other day that he wants to be buyers at the trade deadline. But that's going to dictate how the Orioles are playing. And it just feels like if the Orioles were within striking distance, around 2 or 3 games out, or hopefully they're better than that, going into the trade deadline, that I think Mike Elias is going to be buyers and Orioles will be buyers and try to get them over the hump and get them in the playoffs.
Let's cover a couple of things that you mentioned there, Ben. I want to start with when we talk about the disappointment, I feel like the name that's most thrown into that conversation is Gunnar Henderson. And obviously last night, Gunnar got going. Craig Albertaz moves him up to the leadoff spot, and I think that a lot of people were surprised by that given his struggles. But what do you make of that? Do you feel like that could prove to be a turning point? Do you think they should stick with him leading off? And just what do you make of Gunnar's struggles in general and how we've kind of got to this point?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And look, I still look at Gunnar Henderson as a premium player. I look at Gunnar Henderson as a franchise player when I see Gunnar Henderson. The care factor, in my opinion, for Gunnar Henderson is off the charts, and I think it hurts him from time to time. Like, he really wants to do well. He really cares a lot about this team, about this franchise, and about his performance on the field. I saw Gunnar in spring training. I thought he looked great. I thought Gunnar was poised for a 30-30 year. And look, he's on pace to hit 30 homers, but we know that the batting average is not where we need it to be and where he wants it to be by any stretch of the imagination. And so I don't know. I think it's learning for Gunnar Henderson. He had a lot of success, obviously, a little bit earlier in his career last year. Maybe not the numbers, but it still was a career high last year in doubles. I thought he played defense great last year. I think he only made 8 errors last year, but he's your franchise player, and I'm glad to see Craig Albertaz sticking with him and not dropping him in the lineup. I think that's a crazy decision, honestly. I know a lot of people around Birdland say, we got to drop him in the lineup. But let's be honest about this. If the Orioles, and I said this on the air last night, if the Orioles are going to make the playoffs, it's because Gunnar Henderson got going. That's got to be the biggest part of it. I mean, Pete Alonso needs some help. We know that. And Petey's had a slow start, and, man, he's been awesome as of late. And he's doing exactly what you hoped he would do when he came to Baltimore, put this Oriole uniform on. But he needs some help around him, and it's got to be the guy, Gunnar Henderson, to do that. And so Gunnar's got a lot of pressure on him, but he wants that pressure, I think, in some ways. And I think that he's poised, and I think he can have a good second half. I heard him talk like you did the other day, and he sounded very frustrated. I think he's frustrated with the way he's playing. He's frustrated with his team. I think he's got a lot of frustration. But I just want to go tell Gunnar Henderson I want to grab him by the cheeks like Mike Flanagan grabbed me many, many years ago. And he just simply said, try easier. And I didn't know what that meant. I was 23 years old, and Mike Flanagan grabs me by the face, and he goes, then I need you to try easier. You're trying too hard right now. You care too much right now. And I was like, Flanagan, what does that mean? I don't even know what that means. When I get in trouble, I try harder. He said, that's your problem. You're trying too hard. He said, just let your ability take over, try to relax a little bit, and go have fun playing the game of baseball. Well, you know what? It took me a little time to figure that out. I just want to grab Gunnar right now and say, Gunnar, I need you to try easier, buddy. We love you. We have all the confidence in the world in you, but you're trying too hard right now. Go play this game that you love and play it in a way that you love the game of baseball and enjoy it. And I think Gunnar can turn this thing around. I really do. But I believe in him. I think he's an elite player. I think he's a franchise player. And I'm going to stick behind him the whole way because I think Gunnar can be a big part of the success. And I think the Orioles are going to go according to him. And, of course, good to get Adley Rutschman back and Rutsch doing his thing last night coming up. And so, look, there's some pieces to work with the Orioles for sure. But there's a lot of phases of the game, in my opinion, the defense, the offense, and, of course, the pitching has to get cleaned up a little bit.
Ben McDonald is with us. Ben, as you allude to, you don't think that he should be dropped down. But is the leadoff spot right? Like, is that the thing that unlocks him?
Well, I think, sometimes managers do this at every level. Sometimes to get the offense going a little bit, there has to be a shakeup. And you shake some things up, you move some pieces around. Whether you think it's the right move or not, you shake things up a little bit. And I'll just take you back to the last 13 games. I mean, the Orioles are only, scoring 3.9 runs per game in the last 13 games. The offense has not been great. It's not been the offense that you hoped that you were going to get. So I think in a lot of ways, Craig Albertaz is just trying to shake things up a little bit and move some guys around. And sometimes that pays off. And look, it paid off for Gunnar last night. Like, as you mentioned, he got a couple of base hits last night. He walked as well. So 4 plate appearances. He was on base 3 out of 4 times. So it worked last night for sure.
Ben, you mentioned the deadline, and it's such an interesting conversation the Orioles are grappling with and the fan base is grappling with. And as you point out, Mike Elias says the other day that, hey, if this is the spot we're in, we're going to go for it. And I certainly get that. I have been convinced that if you're going to be aggressive, you're going to be aggressive for pitching and, preferably controllable pitching, because I don't know how this season goes, but there's only so much of that. You bring up their offensive struggles. Is there a bat profile that you feel like could still, another outfielder to throw into the mix? Obviously, right now, the way Colton Cowser's playing defensively, you do not want him out of the lineup, but is there an ideal way to add to maybe jumpstart this offense a little bit?
I think there is. I think it has to be the right piece to add to that. Now, what is that piece, right? I mean, some people have been talking about, well, the Orioles really need a third baseman. They need an everyday third baseman, too. They need a guy that's been there and done that before over at third base. He can bring some offense consistency to this thing, too. We know Kobe Mayo is great against left-handers, really struggles against right-handers. Blaze Alexander's playing more than he's ever played in his career. This bat's been unbelievable the last month. He's kicked the ball around like he did last night a couple of times, which isn't like him. But, look, it's tough as a utility player when you're bouncing 3 or 4 different positions to be as consistent as you want to be. But I think if I know Mike Elias, I think he's looking at all phases. I think he's looking at a left-handed reliever, potentially another reliever back there. I think he's looking at a starter, and I do think he's looking at ways to bolster the offense a little bit and get it going. And whether that's a third baseman, an outfielder, whatever it could be, I think all doors are open right now, to be honest with you, to whatever he feels like can best suit this team to kind of get it kickstarted a little bit. I still think this offense is better than what it's performing. I still think it has a chance to get going. And so for me, I'm looking at the back end of the bullpen, to be honest with you. I think another left-handed reliever back there, a situational lefty would be big. And I'm also kind of looking at a starting pitcher with controllable options, with controllable years as well, And so I think that's out there too, But on the flip side of things, if this thing gets sideways, you could see some guys get moved for the Orioles too, and you'd hate to see that. But I mean, that's the reality of not playing well and not performing well when you get down to the trade deadline.
Boy, Ben, that one is the one that I feel like people have been talking about the most, and the name that keeps getting thrown out is Adley Rutschman, right? And it's a tough conversation because nobody wants Adley Rutschman to be traded. Like, nobody's rooting for that, but he is a year away from free agency, and who knows where he and his team are, and if they're saying, hey, we love you, but we're going to go to the market, and if that's the case, are the Orioles in a spot where they have to maximize an asset value? And those types of phrases are not, boy, it sounds so antithetical to what we want baseball to be, but it's just the reality of what you're faced with as an organization. What do you do when it comes to Adley Rutschman?
That's a great question, and I know that name's been thrown up a lot. I've heard the same. And Mike Elias, and you heard it like I did, came out and he quickly said, "No way."
Of course, we want him to be
part of this.
But it takes 2 to tango, right? Like, that's the way it works.
Right. That's right. And I get it. Adley's 1 year away. And put it like this: I don't think anybody's safe. But I think the offer would have to absolutely knock the socks off of Mike Elias to do something like that. But I still don't think that gets done. I think more likely, you're looking at Taylor Ward if this thing goes south. Potentially Trevor Rogers, which I'd hate to see Trevor Rogers go too. I really would. But I think that would be your best 2 trade chips would be, Trevor Rogers if you don't have intentions of signing him back, and of course Taylor Ward if you don't have intentions of signing him back. I just don't feel like it's the time with Adley Rutschman, even if this thing goes sideways a little bit more. I just don't think Adley's going anywhere. Now, a year from now, and you try this offseason to lock him up, and it doesn't happen, and a year from now you're in the same situation, absolutely, I could see that happening. I could see it happening. But, I mean, look, we all love Adley Rutschman. He's been a huge part of this. We know what the record is with Adley Rutschman. Ever since he put a big league uniform on here in Baltimore, he's been a difference maker. He's one of the fan favorites, and we want him to spend the next 7 or 8 years of his career right here in Baltimore. But as you mentioned, this is the business side of baseball that kind of gets ugly from time to time. This is where, fan bases get their hearts ripped out because some of their players they grow up watching and they come to their towns as rookies and they're 22 or 23 years old, and all of a sudden they're gone after 5 or 6 years. But that's the reality of this game and where it is right now. So you love the the fan side of things, and we want players, but you also understand the business side of this game, and sometimes the business side of this game is ugly.
That is the reality. All right, Ben McDonald, last Friday, I was on your Twitter, and I saw make sure this is your mom who was cooking, correct?
Correct.
Now, you said, thank gosh, no chicken feet this time. And I'm looking at the pot that you posted.
Oh yeah. That was my mother-in-law.
Okay.
That was my mother. Now
Okay.
my mom cooks a lot too. And I put
right.
videos, but
I know you put a lot of videos.
Yeah. My mother-in-law is different though. She comes from real Cajun down there around Lafayette, Louisiana, around Ron Guidry country down there. And when I tell you those folks down there, they don't waste nothing. They don't waste anything. So when they cook chicken, they cook in every part of the chicken. And so I was teasing her because a few years ago, I went back for seconds. She made this big chicken stew, man. And look, a woman can cook. I mean, my wife's dad never spoke a word of English until he was in 7th grade, all French. And his mom, my wife's grandmother, never spoke a word of English, all French. Cajun French is what they spoke. And so they're real Cajun people. But anyway, they know how to cook. But several years ago, Margaret made this great chicken stew. And I went back for seconds and I dug deep into that pot with a big old spoon. And there comes a chicken foot that was the size of my hand. I instantly lost my appetite. Instantly lost my appetite.
Everything about Cajun food makes me happy. Everything, like if you just did for the rest of your life posting videos of Louisiana cooking, I would be your number one subscriber. I would pay you to do this, Ben McDonald. It's been my dream. I want to come spend Thanksgiving with you at some point in my life. But
you need to come down because the folks are between my mom. I'm so fortunate between my mom and my mother-in-law, of course, my wife, who learned from both of them. I mean, the crawfish etouffees, the crawfish bisque, the chicken stews, I mean, look, it doesn't get any better than what it is right there. People say, well, how do you stay so skinny with all that food down there? And I said, honestly, when I know my mom is cooking dinner or my mother-in-law, I don't even eat during the day. I skip breakfast, I skip lunch, and I only eat dinner. That's the only way, because if I ate every meal, I'd weigh 400 pounds. I'm just telling you.
But I have experienced chicken feet, and I'm going to have to join you on this one. I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass on that part of the pot.
I hollered at my mother-in-law. I said, Margaret, what is this in the pot? She said, it's chicken feet, son. You can have as many as you want. I said, no, ma'am. I'm going to save them all for you.
Yeah, correct. You go ahead and enjoy. At Real Ben McDonald, of course, is how you follow him. Can I get it from you one more time? A soon-to-be welcome to the month of...
Let me tell you this. I hope the Orioles get going, and if they do, it's going to happen in the wonderful month of July.
Ben McDonald, you're the best, brother. Always appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Anytime. Take care of yourself.